Hello, everyone. Today it is my pleasure and honor to sit down and speak with Mayor Mike Coffman. Mr. Mayor, it is a delight to have you in joining us today. As a graduate of the first Leadership Aurora class back in 1984, Mayor Coffman has really dedicated his career, one, to defending our country and also making a difference for our local community and now with the community of Aurora. The mayor actually grew up in Aurora, attended Aurora Public Schools, and actually graduated from the University of Colorado. He served a combined 20 years in the Army Reserve, as well as the U.S. Marine Corps and the Marine Corps Reserve, retiring as a major back in 1994. Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you so much for your incredible service to our country. I appreciate that. And since 1989, Mayor Coffman has dedicated his life to public service, serving in Colorado State House of Representatives, the State Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, in addition to being elected to the Colorado State Treasurer and Secretary of State. And as we very well know, back in November of 2019, he was elected to serve as mayor of our great city, Aurora. So, Mr. Mayor, it is an honor and a privilege to speak with you today. So thank you so much for your time. And I am very much looking forward to our conversation. I just want to kick it over to you for a couple of remarks.
Thank you. Let me just add one thing to my resume that was very interesting. That is, I resigned from being the state treasurer in 2005 to return at the request of the United States Marine Corps to active duty for an assignment in Iraq in 2005 and into 2006, where I combined my military knowledge with my knowledge of government, and I was the officer in charge of the election coordination cell for Multinational Forces West for their constitutional referendum in Iraq and for their first national election. And then in the second half of my assignment, I went to the Western Euphrates River Valley, where I worked on establishing interim local governments. And so extremely interesting, returned and became state treasurer again.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's absolutely remarkable. And Mr. Mayor, it's an honor, and I'm so delighted to have our viewers get a chance just to hear from you directly. And that's really the heart behind this program, Impact Aurora, Inspiring Unity, Change, and Service, is really to hear from remarkable individuals such as yourself, and really hear about the incredible work that you're doing and have done on a daily basis just to inspire leadership and really have a sustainable and lasting impact on our community. So I really appreciate it. And so really just to get started with our conversation today, Mr. Mayor, as a graduate of the Leadership Aurora program back in 1984, I believe, the first class, how has this program that you recall going through it has impacted you maybe personally and professionally?
Well, it was extremely important to me. I had come back from the active duty in the Marine Corps in early 1983, 27 years old, started a business, small business. And so it was such a big deal for me to get into the first class in 1984 and to be able to do two things, I think. One is to meet extraordinary people with a lot more experience than I had in their respective fields that became mentors and provided a network for me to grow my business, but also get more involved in the community. And then I think I love the fact that we had different subject areas every month to where I learned about the city. And so it was really inspiring. And I think that not only from the standpoint of being more involved in the Chamber of Commerce in moving my business, small business forward, but getting involved in the community.
That's fantastic. And just from the class that you participated in, do you have any favorite memories or remember, I believe the program had some community and impact projects. Do you remember any of kind of those things that stood out to you?
No, because I'm not sure. I can't remember I'm not sure back then if they had, to what extent. That I don't believe that we had a class project. But I think what I remember, certainly the extraordinary cross section of people, and that it created friendships and mentorships that lasted decades after that, and helped me, grow as an individual, and certainly, again, helped me grow my small business.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And kind of as I alluded to in the introduction, you've dedicated most of your career to public service, to the state of Colorado, our country, as well as the city of Aurora. The question I have for you is, how have you seen the community change and grow since you even have gone through the Leadership Aurora program back in '84? And why do you think Aurora is such just a special place to live, work, and play?
Well, certainly Aurora was on a growth trajectory back then. There's no question about it, but it wasn't the diverse community that it is today. And it wasn't the culturally dynamic and economically dynamic community that it is today. I mean, you had at that time Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center, which was very underutilized. You didn't have Buckley Air Force Base. You had a sleepy National Guard base. Now these two areas, the Anschutz Medical Campus and Buckley, are our largest employers for the city, and really add to our economic growth. And so, and the diversity is so extraordinary. Now 20% of this city's foreign-born. Extraordinary immigrant communities that bring such economic and cultural vitality to our city. And so these things, as well as the growth of the African American community in our city, and extraordinary civil rights icons like Barbara Shannon Bannister, who really, I think, did so much to pave the way for our city in terms of being a welcoming city to everyone, to all who call it home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So just kind of going off of that, as you have seen the community just grow and thrive over the last, few decades and years, kind of the heart of this program and kind of the Leadership Aurora program as well is kind of that giving back to the community. And you've done so much of that throughout your entire career. Can you talk to us just a little bit about why that community engagement and that service back to the community is so important?
Well, I think anybody who's a leader in public life should always think about themselves as, service above self, in terms of making a sacrifice for the good of the whole. And I think that's just so important. But Aurora is such an extraordinary place. And I think through your questions, I think we'll be able to say why.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just kind of going off of some of the insights that you might have and have gained just throughout your incredible service and leadership. And what would you say is something that you might try to do every single day to maybe inspire unity, change, and service to the Aurora community?
It's a little bit more challenging right now during the pandemic, but it is really reaching out to all segments of our community and leaving no one behind. And so I've learned Spanish to where I do Spanish language interviews. I'm able to hear from, which is our largest immigrant community, able to really hear from them and understand their issues, directly. And I think that's very important. And it's also certainly a sign of respect for the community. And then, but we also have large African immigrant community, large Asian immigrant communities, and it is so exciting. And so I miss, because of the pandemic, not going to the events that I normally go to. We have a very diverse faith community as well. And so I really look forward to being able to go back to different houses of worship every week, and that's exciting. And we have a synagogue, we have a Buddhist temple, we don't have a Hindu temple, but there's the closest one is in Centennial, but we have a large Hindu Sikh population. Mosque, we've got several mosques, and I go there as well. And I'm a Christian and a variety of Christian faiths. But I think that, I think for a lot of the immigrant communities, and I think for the African American community as well, that the church or their house of worship represents something different than, say, a normal Christian church or one that I go to, where theirs is kind of very much the center of their entire community. And in the African American sphere, really the center of activism. And so it's just so important to be able to reach out to them and to go to a mosque and to say to people or to, whatever religion, to say that as mayor, I want to protect your right to practice your religion without fear of violence or fear of intimidation or discrimination. And so I think that's a very important message. But I've been able to connect with a lot of communities through churches. In fact, I've just, through their houses of worship, I just started a group with Dr. Barbara Shannon Baxter's help of Black pastors. And we will meet, I think starting next week. We're going to do virtually. Unfortunately, we can't do in person right now. But to really talk about the state of their congregations in the African American community, and hope to grow that group over time. I meet on a monthly basis and visit their churches, their houses of worship as well. So there's so many cultural activities in our city as well, and I miss in the Asian community, in the African American community, and I really miss in the Hispanic community not going to those events. So I think as a mayor, I think reaching out to the diverse communities is a way of saying that I'm the mayor of all the people of our city.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And as you were kind of alluding to just some of the challenges with this past year and navigating through a pandemic, as we all very much know, this year has ushered in so many changes that has fundamentally changed the way in which we do our everyday life. So just with that, as you have reached out to a number of these wonderful, diverse communities, what is maybe something positive in your life, whether it be personally or professionally, that you have experienced, even navigating such a difficult season, such as a pandemic that we've all been going through?
Well, I think helping businesses get through this, particularly small businesses, well, large ones too. I was just in a meeting with a Gaylord the other day in talking to public health officials about, if they have a percentage of guests that are vaccinated, can they start booking conventions later on in the year? But, my heart is with small business because I was an Aurora small business owner for 17 years, certainly did other things during those years, like being a state legislator. But that the stress of these small businesses, it just breaks my heart. And to be able to reach out to them, to be able to help them in any way we can, certainly as the mayor and as a city.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And so outside of serving as the mayor of the community, you mentioned early on with the Leadership Aurora program that it really has an opportunity to connect you with so many different individuals professionally from various different sectors across the Aurora community, and really seeing how people are involved in so many different ways and also can be interconnected. So just outside of serving as the mayor for the city, what are maybe just some other groups and organizations that you get yourself involved in on the
Sure. Well, I'm active in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, as an example, although we've been meeting virtually. Normally we meet periodically in Washington and different parts of the country. But Aurora, and it's usually for larger cities, but Aurora is now a large city. It is the 54th largest city in America, one of the most diverse. But certainly by population, the 54th largest city in America. It has a landmass a little larger than Denver, with a third of it undeveloped. I mean, with the right economic policies, this city has incredible opportunities in terms of economic growth and redevelopment.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. So what are maybe just some qualities? You have had quite an extensive just experience in leadership and service. What are some qualities that you maybe look for personally in leadership in the arena of public service?
Yeah, so I would say three issues. I think one is that I previously mentioned, service above self, but another one is the ability to listen. And I think that you really have to be able to listen listen first, speak later, understand what people's issues are that are important to them, and have empathy, I think, is a third issue, to be able to feel what they're going through, and to understand it emotionally. But I think that those are three qualities that are very important to a good leader.
Oh, that's fantastic. Are there any maybe personal stories that you've encountered, maybe even in your time of service, your military career, or even in the public service community, that really stand out to you, kind of in regards to some of those key elements that you were?
Yeah, I think when I was a state legislator, I think in the state Senate, in 1996, I wrote the what's called the Colorado Works program, the welfare reform program for the state of Colorado. When the federal government devolved it to states with broad parameters, have been said, you figure out how to get there in terms of moving people to self-sufficiency. And what I was able to do is go out and listen to a lot of single-parent moms, mostly, about their challenges, what would help them move out of poverty and out of this subsistence lifestyle that became a trap to so many of them. And so instituting partial benefits, enabling them to still work, the requirement of work training or education, doing something affirmative in exchange for benefits. And so I think that I haven't followed the policy where it is now. I'm sure there's been changes over time. It was implemented in 1997. And then right after implementing it, at my own expense, I visited every county in the state to see how the program was going. I passed in the legislature, signed by Governor Romer at the time. I think in the Congress, I think probably that there was a problem, particularly with the United States Army, after it was downsizing from Iraq during the Obama administration. And I think that they chose a path that has not been done historically before, to thin their force down, and were discharging soldiers en masse with, other than honorable discharges, I mean, based on very minor offenses. And these were often combat veterans returning that were having trouble adjusting to being from a war zone to a garrison peacetime environment, and as to be expected. And they were discharged without any benefits, to include mental health benefits, and many of them did have PTSD from the battlefield. And so to be able to correct that legislatively by mandating that they do have access to mental health care, and then mandating legislatively, passing legislation to the National Defense Authorization Act that required that their discharges be reviewed for those combat veterans that if they did have any kind of a record of post-traumatic stress disorder or a traumatic brain disorder, a traumatic brain incident, TBI, that they have an upgrade in their discharge. And so that affected tens of thousands of soldiers. And so that was really an understanding from my own military background of their situation and that it wasn't right.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for all of your incredible work through a lot of that legislation. And so just to kind of maybe follow up on that, these could be some of the similar experiences that you were just alluding to. What are maybe just some of your own challenges that you've experienced and had to confront with leadership and, maybe service back to the community, and how maybe did you overcome some of those challenges that you were facing?
Sure. I think probably I had a difficult transition going from being an infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps as a 27-year-old, leaving the Marine Corps and going into a small business. I continued in the reserves my career, but starting a small business and dealing with employees. And, I was far too rigid, with that military mindset. And so I had to adjust my leadership style from the military to being a civilian.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. So maybe what were some of the things that you did or learned from that experience to kind of transition completely different styles of just, I guess, engaging and kind of confronting?
Well, military is pretty tough. I was way too rough on people, and they weren't Marines. And so it took me a little while to understand that, and probably some employee turnover helped me understand that fairly, in good order.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So as you continue to lead the city of Aurora, how can someone listening to this program really get more involved in Aurora? What would be some recommendations that you would encourage them to get involved in this community and help give back and provide an impact?
Sure. What I did after Leadership Aurora was to get engaged in the city through the various boards and commissions that are available, where you can take your experience from the Leadership Aurora and build on that. We have 20 boards and commissions. They are, you have to be appointed by a member of City Council and actually voted on. I was on the Human Relations Commission and the Citizens Advisory Budget Committee. And I think that those were extraordinary experiences for me prior to being elected to public office, and available to residents of Aurora. And so would strongly encourage members of the leadership class to take a look at those opportunities in boards and commissions for the city.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So as we start to just draw the conversation a little bit to a close, I just want to ask a fun question. And maybe this could be something that you've been doing even during the pandemic season, but if you can have a treat yourself day or an indulgence day of doing any kind of fun activity, a meal of choice, anything, what would that be, or what has it been maybe during this season?
Well, I tell you what, it would be, I miss two things: going to movie theaters and popcorn. Absolutely. And that would be, I I'm not, the live streaming kind of guy or a Netflix kind of guy. I'm a theater guy. Mm-hmm. And I really, really miss that. And I, tend to go on a weekend. I'll just, used to just pop over, in an afternoon when it wasn't crowded and go in and see a movie. And I really miss not being able to do that and look forward to that again. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mr. Mayor, I definitely want to just thank you so much for participating with us in this program. It really is such an honor to have you, and as a graduate of the first class of the Leadership
Yeah,
Aurora
before you
program.
were born. That was
This is true.
before you were born.
This is true.
Mhm.
I just want to give you an opportunity just to share anything else that you would like to add or even close with for some of the viewers here.
Well, I just to say that I think Leadership Aurora is so important. And I think it was in my introduction, not just to uh, Aurora and to the community, but to American government. And it really set a path for me that I think has been very exciting. I feel very fortunate, certainly to have been in that class and to have had the experiences that I have. And, each one of them is built on the next one in terms of experience. I'm very excited about being the mayor of our city, but I think I owe a lot to being in Leadership Aurora and in that inaugural class.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know it's such an honor to have you. And I want to thank you again for your tremendous service to our country and our community and also just to the wonderful city of Aurora. So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you again. It's been an
Thank
honor
you.
to have you today. And so with that, I think we'll go ahead and bring it to a close. And I want to thank our viewers for also being able to tune in and listen to our conversation. So looking forward to many more to come. So thank you, everyone.